We finally have a direct response from Jeff Spring and the Pro Tour, giving us a lot more context as to why there was late payments. Now, is the evidence good enough? Let's find out. Before we get to Jeff Spring, just want to shout out the winners of the Drivepalooza Box Challenge. Each one of these commenters have won a disc, so if you are one of these people, just make sure to DM me on Instagram. And if you want to stay in the loop for disc golf news, be sure to subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. And then in my previous video, I mentioned how big money skins almost didn't even happen. I want to make a bit of a correction there because it definitely did happen. They had a huge amount of spectatorship on site. They paid out a lot of money to all the players. So while the live streaming presence wasn't great, the actual event itself on site was, and I just want to make a small correction on that. All right, so on to Jeff Spring and the Pro Tour. I was not expecting to get this quick of a response, but on the Staggered Stance podcast, formerly Nick and Matt show, Jeff Spring had this to say.
Now, the truth is, over the course of the season, there are a few payouts that have been delayed, and that's not okay. That's 100% on us. We're committed to ensuring that we're 100% going forward. I won't get into, the nitty gritty details, but what I can say is that over the course of the season, we have over 30 event weekends that, deliver over $2 million to the players over 2 continents and 6 countries. And we have worked really hard to make sure that our administrative systems, the event teams and the players themselves are registered, working in those systems that dovetail and get payouts out on time and consistently.
And in classic Jeff Spring fashion, he does try to minimize the actual occurrences, so we really don't know. Just stating that there was a few payouts that were delayed and stating that that's not okay, and going forward they will try to fix it 100%. But I think a lot of credibility could have been added to his claims if he did bring up just a little bit of the nitty-gritty details, but he does go on to state this.
But I'm prioritizing an effort this offseason to make sure that in the few cases across the season that there are delays, that just doesn't happen for any reason.
But when you're talking about money and payouts that need to be paid to players that aren't making that much money, it is really important. It is also your contractual obligation, so being late even once or twice feels unacceptable.
Don't do 48 hours, say by the end of next week. It's not fair, Yuli, for some of these players that are literally depending on that money to make it to the next event. For them to not get their money.
And then in a subtle flex from Jeff, he mentioned in addition to having 30 events, it is not a cash flow issue. They clearly have enough cash that is not a concern to pay out players, which feels good that the Pro Tour has enough cash, but it also is like, oh, so you just didn't do it. It is definitely not like, oh, we want to wait till this stuff gets paid. It is just, you didn't do it, which is very interesting. And then we got some answers to some other questions that I've been wanting to know for so long. First one being Silver Series. I've been wanting them to come back because they were so much better than a lot of events this year. Sure, there was a lot of stinkers, but overall, I fell in love with these courses. Having these mountainous courses on tour was so fun to watch, and it almost felt like we lost all the uniqueness that we had on tour. And this is what Jeff said.
When we stopped doing the Silver Series, it was in large part due to, response to the touring pros, where they said, hey, your schedule's grueling.
So it was just briefly mentioned, but he mentioned it was a player focused thing. And he does this a lot where he mentions, hey, the players want this. This is designed around the players. And I feel like that is a bit of a cop-out answer because you could always point to that for every single answer. So while I definitely don't love it, I can certainly see how players may get super burnout on the tour, but also most players weren't playing Silver Series, so I don't think it really affected them that much. And then the next clarification was the issue around players not being able to play any other events in the weekends of Pro Tour events.
It wasn't designed to limit players from playing other events at all.
It wasn't designed to stop players from playing events. Yeah, right. It wasn't. It could only be that. It could only be that. There are no other reasons you would have that stipulation for tour card members. It could only be to stop players from playing events.
Putting an event together is a big deal for our event teams, our local organizing committee. And, if there are a number of players that are not showing up to some of the events. These are multi-year, year-round, fundraising efforts. As a tour, we try to have a responsibility to our event teams and even the players that show up week in, week out. And so, as we go forward in future years, and I'm sure it's something that we'll discuss, but it wasn't designed to stop players from playing any event that they want to at all.
So while I hate that answer, he does state there is a lot of money invested from everybody, not only the Pro Tour, but sponsors, event teams, everybody involved has a lot vested in your event. Like say Maple Hill, OTB, Portland, all these events have so much money towards them that having a low turnout would be very bad. But also, that's not your choice to make. If players don't want to play it, they're not going to play it regardless of if they have tour card or not. So I really don't like the fact that it seems like he's probably going to bring it up again in a following season.
It was media focused, right?
I think what it comes down to is the language was just so vague. You know what I mean? And when you're signing big contracts like that, you can't be vague in those situations, because then you drive fear in the people. Yes. And then they're like, well, what? I don't even know what that means. What do you mean? I can't play a C tier?
Whatever, I'm getting a little heated. And then the last question brought up was the tour card. And this was the bombshell for me. They have been promoting this tour card. I've been making videos in the past stating how it's actually not that good of a deal unless you are truly a full-time player playing every event. And then in the occurrence that you are that player, your sponsor will probably pay most of these events already. So as of right now filming, there was 12 MPO and 12 FPO players registered, but that is well below full capacity. And of course, you might be wondering, are the players hesitant over this new policy? Is the price way too high? Are they waiting on contracts? Is there a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we just don't see yet? And he goes on to state how a lot of companies sign a lot of these players at once at the end of December, start of January.
The flurry of registrations came probably the last week of December last year.
So I fully understand that. And he went on to state that the early bird pricing is actually way below what I thought it was.
We have incentivized folks by discounting the tour card.
So anybody that signs up now only has to pay $850, which to me totally changes the calculations, because originally I thought it was $1150. So while $850 is definitely not cheap, I do think it provides a lot more value than I originally thought. And then to go along with this, while we don't have any information about what he's actually stating, Jeff does go on to state that there are financial assistance given to players to make sure they can make it on the tour.
There's not as much lucrative opportunity from manufacturing sponsors. And so we're kind of talking to individual players, making plans with them. In some cases, we work with them on financial assistance in order to make sure that they're able to participate.
Now, ultimately, how many players? Is this like top 30 players? Are these players we know and love? Are these players that are on the verge of being on tour and they almost have to quit because they don't have enough money? Who knows? But I will say it is incredibly interesting that Jeff and the Pro Tour team are at least supplementing some players to make it on tour, because to me, that is the ultimate display that they do support their players, and that's awesome. So while I definitely might seem like a bit of a hater here, I will say if you are doing that for your players, awesome, especially in a season where contract droughts are very likely to occur, because I think we are on the verge of seeing a lot of players just jump to end of our discraft just to make enough to get by. And throughout the entire interview, he kept referencing the players board and saying no decision is done without contacting them first. And while that sounds really good in theory, I do have some concerns if that's actually truly being done on every single issue, because it does seem like some of these issues would not have happened if they really did contact the players board for all these big issues, like of course the inability to play other events during Pro Tour weekends. But on to the next story, we get a lot more context from Will himself about becoming CEO. And while you might be thinking, who cares? I don't like Prodigy, I don't like Will, I think there is so much value to hear him out, and especially a living legend, someone that you probably don't know that much about if you've just started in the sport, but truly was one of the biggest names in the sport. And not only that, but has been attached to Prodigy since like day one.
There needs to be some hard conversations at Prodigy about the public reputation of the company, plan to do in order to make changes and to address that.
Came in at a 4.3 out of 10, second lowest, only ahead of Lone Star. The number one factor negatively impacting their fandom was the quality of the discs they produce.
Near my number one thing is just people to have a better brand perception of what Prodigy is as a company.
The Ulti-World survey that came out, that of all the people who chose Isaac Robinson as their favorite player, only 10% of those people chose Prodigy as their favorite manufacturer. Whereas if you look at players like AB, Calvin, and Simon with their respective companies, that percentage was 40 to 43 to 38%.
When you have players on hot mics on the DGN broadcasts that are sponsored by your company and they're talking about the plastic, that's not a good thing.
But I'm sure if you haven't thrown Prodigy recently, you're probably saying, what have they done to fix quality concerns? And Will continues to state how the company is a small, new company. It really has not been around all that long. And because they are so small and agile, they have a lot less concerns with overproducing, underproducing, because according to him, they only produce about 10% of their products in China, with the rest being in their manufacturing plant.
That is priority number one. We talk about it every day, about the quality, to have a definition of what is good, what is bad, what are we going to be acceptable, what are we going to be accepting of, and what do we want to get out the door. In the past, we've kind of slid some stuff out the door, and we've actually did not have an answer for some of the stuff, like some of our discs that had chalk that came out of the plastic. And so we have pinpointed exactly what it is. We don't have that problem anymore.
And he really tries to make a continued effort to state, we are always evolving. We're always trying to be better than our last day. And it makes me wonder, were they not doing that beforehand? I don't really know. But I will say, if you won USDGC, you do have a good amount of knowledge on discs. And it seems like over the years, he had more and more responsibility given given to him, so he truly got to understand every single piece of Prodigy.
I had a hand in creating the street team. I had a hand in, a lot of the players that we ended up signing and coming on to the team. I met them on the road. I thought that they needed some support to get up there on the road, and I got them a deal with Prodigy to be a sponsored player.
And so while he definitely has been defensive of Prodigy in the past, and really not that long in the past, like a couple months ago,
it's really easy to go on there and respond, no, you're talking about this that was made 6 years ago. I used to get really caught up in that kind of stuff more when I had, I would say, less responsibilities, maybe less stuff to do, that I really just wanted everybody to love and see Prodigy the same way that I did. But
overall, while I am skeptic, I am excited to see how it all pans out. According to Ultiworld's fan survey, they have a very, very low bar as of right now, so any way to get their name out of the mud would do a lot of good for them.
Prodigy got more zeros than any company except Lone Star by like a fairly significant margin.
But we'll just have to see how it all pans out. And then Will goes on to state how they had a huge opening of the facility. They had 120 people come out and explore their near 500,000 discs.
On Friday last week, we had a Shop the Warehouse where we actually opened up our doors and people were able to come in and shop discs off of the racks, which is the first time any type of public have been able to come in and go through the
that's cool.
Near 500,000 discs.
And I think if you're Will, that is exactly what you need to have fans' perception of you go way up, because other brands do not let you do anything in the facility. And to me, I think that's a bit of a detriment, because I know every brand wants to be like, we have the absolute best plastic. It is a top secret mystery. We do not want to share that with anyone. But in reality, you're all making plastic. You're probably all using the same plastic injection molding machine. Sure, there's probably some proprietary secrets with like your plastic blend, but overall, you're all doing the same thing. So to me, as a consumer, I would say opening up your facility can only do good. But with that, what do you guys think? This is probably one of the few eras in our disc golf life where we get direct answers to all the questions people have been having. And so while both of these people are CEOs, and in general, they probably want to just smooth over any issues, I do think Will provided a lot more honesty than I think Jeff will ever do. But Jeff has always been the person to be mega positive, kind of state everything bad has been done in the past, and in the future, none of those issues will happen. That's kind of the vibe I always get from Jeff, but that is just my thoughts. So with that, what do you guys think? I'd love to know. With that, Wild Runs signing out. Peace.
Chasing